restrict voting by mail as a way to stop illegal voting by non-citizens in federal elections, which is already incredibly rare. Trump himself voted by mail in Florida last month. To the one that Gregory is watching.
And this is NPR News from New York City.
News system. Frescos. A Colorado appeals court has reported the sentencing of former Mesa County Clerk She's in prison for tampering with county voting equipment. The court says she is improperly sentenced.
The former Mesa County clerk was sentenced to more than 8 years in prison for her efforts to search for election fraud in the 2020 election. The Colorado Court of Appeals upheld the sentence that said the trial court used Peters' speech regarding allegations of election fraud and impacted the length of her sentence, and thus ordered resentencing. President Trump has called on the state to release Peters and also pardoned her. But the Colorado court ruled the pardon is unconstitutional because Peters is convicted of a state, not federal crime. I'm Benta Berkland, CPR News.
Renters are feeling some relief as rent costs across the West drop, but home ownership remains out of reach for many.
Did you buy me a couple of burritos, baby?
The median price for a new lease is down 1.5% from a year ago across the country. But in some mountainous states, the decline in cost to renters is much stronger. Rob Warnock is a lead economic researcher with Apartment List, which is behind the study.
5% year-over-year rent decline in Denver.
It'll give me a third of, maybe a quarter of a burrito. Think they'll do that? Yeah, just want a quarter of a
Well, this is good news for renters.
You think they'll do a quarter of a burrito?
I'm still higher
You don't have
than they
it.
were before the COVID pandemic 6 years ago. Still, Warnock says the supply-demand equation in the marketplace gives a small edge to renters looking for a deal. For the Mountain West News Bureau, I'm Yvette Fernandez.
The strike in the Sheridan School District 2, just southwest of downtown Denver, is now in its second day. Teachers and staff have been working without a union contract since August. Union President Kate Easter says the lack of funding has resulted in high teacher turnover rates.
Education gets worse, and then there's less students, and then because there's less students, there's less money, and then because there's less money, the education's not as good. And I think we have an opportunity here to reinvest in our community.
The school district closed schools through tomorrow. Across the Front Range, cooler and breezy tomorrow with temps in the 50s and plenty of sun. This is CPR News. It's 4:25.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Easy Cater, a workplace food platform dedicated to making it easy for organizations to order food from a wide variety of restaurants, set up employee meal programs, and manage food spend at easycater.com. From Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the sustaining members of this NPR station. From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Lana Sanders.
And I'm Scott Detrow. After a thunderous launch from Florida's Kennedy Space Center yesterday, astronauts are now in mission to the moon. It's the first lunar mission.
Oh my God, Becky. Oh wow, look at this. This has got to be $100 bill. Look at this. See it? Doesn't it look like $100 bill?
Florida Public Media's Brendan Byrne reports.
10.
It was a flawless takeoff from Launch Complex 39B. The SOS rocket's engines roaring to life and sending the Orion capsule and its crew of 4 into space.
You don't need it.
But Commander Reed Wiseman and his crew of fellow NASA astronauts Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen had little time to take in those views. They had work to do.
You got it. Don't know where that other Chloe is.
Just hours after liftoff, Glover, the mission's pilot, took manual control of the Orion spacecraft, flying it around a piece of the SLS rocket that was no longer needed. NASA wanted to know how the spacecraft handled in comparison to the simulators here on the ground.
Much quieter. That little robot like to drive on a rocky road, but much quieter than in the ship.
This will be important for future moon missions, ones that will need to dock with a lunar lander while in space. This test, according to Glover, was a success. It's just one of many tests surface and snap photos of them for further study. This follows in a time-honored tradition. Apollo astronauts who visited the moon more than a half century ago were also trained by geologists. These new observations will help scientists better understand the moon and possibly help plan for a future human landing. And they'll get another unique observational opportunity, the chance to see an eclipse while in deep space.
During the eclipse, the moon will be blocking the sun. They will be able to see the sun's corona.
NASA's Lori Glaze said the crew received training here on the ground to best capture images of this view and share them with us back on Earth.
They're prepared to make those solar observations. It'll be a pretty cool and unique opportunity.
The crew will also conduct research on themselves. Cohen says since the astronauts will be in deep space for most of the mission, scientists are taking this opportunity to study the impact a trip like this will have on the human body, with some sensors that they wear and others they have positioned around the capsule to measure
the radiation environment, the crew cabin environment, temperature, things like that. Not only important for the crew's health, but also for the health and well-being of any instruments that we put into that space or any samples that were eventually
Artemis 2 is a packed schedule as it circles the moon, ending the mission with a point to splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the west coast of the U.S. And while these engineering and science tests are critical for future Artemis astronauts, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman hopes the mission will inspire people outside of the agency.
I think after Artemis 2, you're going to have more kids that are going to dress up as astronauts for Halloween. We want to inspire and create interest in the next generation to grow up and contribute to this endeavor.
And Artemis 2 is working to do just that. NASA is streaming the mission, so anyone can join the crew in a capsule on this new chapter of lunar exploration. For NPR News, I'm Brendan Byrne in Orlando.
The United Kingdom convened an international meeting today to discuss ways to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. This comes just a day after President Trump again said that the U.S. should not bear the responsibility of opening the strait and called on other countries to do so. The U.S. was not involved in today's meeting. NPR's Fatima Al-Qassab has been monitoring these talks. She joins us from London. Hi. Start by telling us more about this meeting. What countries were involved?
Yeah, so this was a virtual call convened by Britain's Foreign Secretary from London, and it included counterparts from over 40 countries, representatives from European countries, Canada, but as you said, not the US. Now, Yvette Cooper spoke to her counterparts from a long banquet table.
God damn it! The fuck?
And in her opening remarks, she talked about Iran's recklessness, which she said was a direct threat to global prosperity.
We have seen Iran hijack an international shipping route to hold the global economy hostage.
Now, this wasn't a conversation about military options. The Foreign Secretary said these would be discussed next week at another meeting of military planners from these same countries. But the goal of today's meeting was thrashing out economic and diplomatic steps that this coalition can take both now and when the fighting stops to help the flow of shipping in this crucial waterway.
Okay, interesting. Did anything substantive come out of the meeting?
Yeah, so they discussed a lot of things, including increasing international diplomatic pressure, including through the UN, on Iran to reopen the strait, exploring economic measures such as sanctions to bear on Iran, they said, if the strait remains closed. And they also discussed things like working with the International Maritime Organization to help what the Foreign Secretary said were some 20,000 sailors and thousands of ships that are currently stuck in the strait. But she said it was also about looking ahead to the future, how they can secure the strait, when and only when the fighting stops. But ultimately, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper said this was about showing the strength of what she said was our international determination to reopen the strait. She was keen to stress that 40 countries had taken part and showed that they were coming together and they were united in their condemnation of Iran and in their commitment to solve this through diplomatic means.
Now, President Trump wants other countries to open the waterway by force. What have you heard from other world leaders about that idea?
Yeah, so we had French President Emmanuel Macron saying... Iranian attacks. He also said this was not a show. This is about peace and war, and it's a time to be serious. And he hit back at Trump's threats about NATO, about withdrawing from NATO. He accused Trump of casting doubt on the alliance and eroding the very substance of the alliance. Earlier, I spoke to Mujtaba Rahman. He's from the
They're
Eurasian
double
Group,
checking.
which is a risk analysis
So when you
firm.
have it,
And he
right?
says the Europeans have not changed their position on this. They're not going to do anything in the hot phase of the war, and they're not going to intervene militarily. But he does think that today's talks in London are significant. He said they're about countries thinking ahead.
Particularly organised around what they are willing to do, both to help Trump in the Strait, but also to prepare for a conflict where they may be left alone.
Left alone, that is to negotiate directly with the Iranians.
And just to reiterate here, neither Iran nor the United States was involved in today's talks, so is there anything that the participating countries can achieve?
Yeah, so Mushtaba Rahman, the analyst, says that he thinks this is mostly a Trump management exercise, as he puts it, because the president has been demanding that allies do more to reopen the strait. But he also said this was about signaling to Iran that the cost of bad behavior to them is large, and that ultimately Iran holds the cards, and any attempt to reopen the flow of shipping would need their agreement.
Yes, Fatima Al-Qassam in London. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're listening to All Things Considered. Here it is.
And this is CPR News. I'm Nathan Fernando Frescas. The conviction of former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters has been upheld. Colorado Court of Appeals has ordered a new sentencing hearing. It ruled the current 9-year prison sentence for Peters was based on improper consideration of a right to free speech. CPR's Tom Hess has been reviewing today's 78-page ruling and shared details with Chandra Thomas.
Can you elaborate on the ruling?
So the headline here is that he's sentencing, and that comes down to this claim that Peters has been making for, I guess, years now, that part of her issue with the court was that it violated the First Amendment right to free speech. The things that she was saying about the elections, that were fraudulent, election security, was what got her a harsher sentence than if she hadn't been saying anything. And so that's the claim she made, and the Court of Appeals agreed that part of that sentencing improperly considered her comments and didn't take into account her comments.
Now, what did the ruling say about Peters' free speech rights as sentencing?
So I'll read from the ruling here, and this is the Court of Appeals referencing the trial court when she was originally convicted, and they say the tenor of the court's comments, that's referring to Judge Randy Barrett, the tenor of those comments makes clear that it felt the sentence length was necessary, at least in part, to prevent her from continuing to espouse views the court deemed damaging. The ruling goes on to say is that at that time, Peters was no longer the clerk, so some of that doesn't hold, and that some of the language did seem to drift toward a sentence that was considering her actions and what she was saying, and the Court of Appeals said that is probably
Yeah, let's go sprint after this. I literally sprinted for like 30 seconds after I did this story.
All right, last thing. Today you also brought us a report about food fortification in Ireland. What that is, please help.
Yeah, it is
Where do you
so
want to go,
tough,
Master?
but fortified foods are pretty
We're gonna watch the storm build because there ain't gonna be no sunset. It's too dark.
A salt shaker, that's fortified with iodine.
We're
There's
gonna what
bread
now?
fortified with folic acid and breakfast cereal fortified
Watch the storm
with
build. Look, you
iron.
can see it looks like it's coming down over there
Yes,
already.
yeah, I just ate fortified cereal this morning. It was like cinnamon checks. And basically, fortified foods contain carefully calculated boosts of essential vitamins and minerals because billions of people around the world are not getting enough micronutrients. And over time, a micronutrient deficiency has serious health consequences.
From susceptibility to disease to impaired growth and development for young children especially.
Nduduzi Mboya is the
I think I need to
co-author of a new
call that
study in
company and
the
tell them
Lancet
that
Global Health, which
my car
measured
doesn't
the
work.
impact of large-scale
See
food
what they were
fortification
trying to do.
programs in 185 countries. And his team found that based on the best available data, these programs prevent 7 billion nutrient gaps worldwide. So this is basically evidence that these programs do have a massive impact. And they estimate that even more nutrient gaps could be prevented if
Wow, now
food
it's coming down
fortification
in
programs
snow.
had higher compliance. This involves manufacturers
temperature out here?
consistently fortifying staple foods at the levels
45?
required by
You
national
drop 10
standards.
degrees
As
quick.
an example, a nutrient
strong
gap in
wind will do
folic
that.
acid has been linked to neural tube defects in infants. And that's why California now requires manufacturers to add folic acid to corn masa flour, which is used to make tortillas. Yeah, Alabama will follow suit with a similar law in June.
All right, so I think my takeaway from all of this is that I've really got to start eating my vegetables and tortillas.
Yeah, and sprinting.
We've been talking with Emily Huang and Regina Barber from NPR's science podcast Shortwave, which you can follow
I'll
on
have
the
to
NPR
watch
app
that
or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to both of you.
Refrigerator
Thank you,
again.
Mona.
Oh yeah, we gotta be right up.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Yeah, got that to be
NPR
so.
comes from this station. And from Progressive Insurance, with its Name Your Price tool, a way to see coverage options based on a driver's budget. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800
Probably could have dropped off Orkins
Price and
there.
coverage match limited
What
by
now?
state law. From the
I
George
said probably
Lucas
could have dropped
Educational
off Orkin
Foundation,
Man's there.
creator of Edutopia, for 35 years sharing
And that
what
truck was
works
there
in
last night,
schools
too.
today and working to inspire new ways to learn tomorrow.
Who was?
More at edutopia.org. And from Proven Winners, with Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs,
Guy's name?
flower, shrubs, and evergreens for
Guy's
gardens and landscapes.
Said the truck back there was there.
Nationwide. ProvenWinnersColorChoice.com/NPR. This is NPR.
There's paper in here.
This is CPR News,
Paper in the
89.5
back.
FM KPRN Grand Junction,
So thankfully it ended up all over my face.
KPRH Montrose, and 88.3 FM KPYR Craig. On translators, Gunnison K210US, Uray K218BE, Parachute K203FJ,
That little orange kitty we have is just
K216BO, and Meeker K216BE.
He just loves the,
and online
he just
at
loves attention.
CPR.org.
Yeah.
You leave, it's like, take me
From the
with you.
Colorado Hospital Association. Almost 7 in 10 Colorado
And he listens to
hospitals
me.
are at risk financially.
I yell at him though, the counselor up there
A
going,
growing number of uninsured patients
Lucky was
are
like,
among
I'm sorry. Lonnie was like,
CHA.com.
Support comes from Pinnacle Assurance.
What does that make you?
Workers' comp providers serving members for over a century.
here, I'll just froze.
Pinnacle offers safety and claim support with a commitment to its
I
members'
didn't want to do
long-term
anything stupid,
success.
so I just yelled.
Pinnacle, membership
And I
building.
got the squirt bottle that bink, 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 bink. I don't squirt it back.
President Trump's speech yesterday about the war with Iran included a familiar threat.
If there's no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously.
On what the president said and didn't say during last night's primetime address. It's All Things Considered from CPR News. I'm Nathan.
Wow, it's looking dark over here.
Every time Coloradans pull into a gas station,
Tornadoes
they feel
are
one
spinning.
impact of the war in Iran. Some are coping with the fast hike in gas prices. Then, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg had high
There's
hopes
something
for the
else.
metaverse.
There we go.
His vision for that immersive, interactive digital world didn't catch on.
He went all in on it, and he missed the boat on AI.
Now Zuckerberg is cutting metaverse loose and investing heavily in AI. It's 5 o'clock. The news is
NPR News in Washington, I'm Riley Barton. Iran fired more missiles at Israel and Gulf Arab states today. It comes even as President Trump claims the threat from the country has been nearly eliminated. Iran's strikes in control of the Strait of Hormuz have disrupted the world's energy supplies. Britain held a call today with nearly 36 countries about how to reopen the strait once the fighting is over. The U.S. is also in the midst of President Trump's trade war, and today marks a milestone in that campaign. Scott Morsey has more on where things stand.
It was exactly a year ago today that President Trump ordered double-digit tariffs on just about everything the U.S. imports. He dubbed it Liberation Day and promised those tariffs pressure into the golden age of stronger factories, lower prices, and a smaller trade deficit. Well, a year later, none of that has happened. U.S. factories have lost 89,000 jobs in the last year. Inflation is higher, not lower, than it was a year ago. And the trade deficit actually widened.
NPR's Scott Morsey reporting. The Trump administration is suing Illinois, Connecticut, and Arizona for the exclusive right to regulate prediction markets. As NPR's Bobby Allen reports, the industry has set off debates about profiting off war and insider trading.
The Commodity Futures Trading Commission is taking the rare step of launching lawsuits against 3 states. It argues sites like Kalshi and Polymarket should not be regulated as gambling businesses. The question of whether prediction market sites are gambling or what's known as a futures contract has set off more than 24 lawsuits pitting state gaming officials against the Trump administration. It's the latest legal development over an issue expected to go all the way to the Supreme Court. Lawmakers in Washington have been expressing alarm over the sites where people can bet thousands of dollars on military strikes in Iran, the extent of famine in Gaza, and what Trump official will leave the White House next. Donald Trump Jr.
That's messed up.
Bobby Allen, PR News.
People are gambling on where we're going to strike next in Iran, and how many Israelis are going to get killed, how many Palestinians are going to get killed in the next bombing.
Pediatric cancers are generally not preventable, but with good medical care, they are treatable. Still, in 2023, there were nearly 150,000 pediatric cancer deaths worldwide, out of nearly 400,000 cases. Nikhil Bhakta of St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital co-authored the study
River's not much higher.
The Lancet. He says in the U.S., the vast majority
River's not much higher than the other day.
survive, but not in parts of Africa and Asia.
Less than 20% of children survive.
The river's not much changed since the other day.
Treating childhood cancer requires a well-functioning
Retire? I thought you were talking about retiring.
No, it's just about the same. Not much higher.
Gabriella Emanuel, NPR News.
Stocks overcame early losses to close mixed today.
Snowflakes.
Close tomorrow. Good Friday.
I thought I saw a couple of, snowflakes.
You probably did. Wow, it's dark there.
They opened it.
Luminescence Foundation. Luminescence Foundation is dedicated to shedding light on neurological research focused on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases and supporting brain conservation initiatives. This is NPR.
Well, this lake is really full.
Construction of future data centers in Denver could be paused for 3 years. The Denver City Council
I'm getting that way.
For the energy and water-intensive projects. Kinfox Power Shelter reports under the proposed
It's so full their little ditch here is retaining water. I said it's so full their little ditch here is retaining water. Or maybe that's water from yesterday. Rain from yesterday.
Data centers have been in Denver for decades, but the emergence of generative AI has caused a boom in data center, typically sporting a larger footprint with higher energy and water needs. Power Shelter, Denver.
Former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters should receive a new sentence. That decision came from the Colorado Court of Appeals today, which found that she was improperly sentenced in 2024. Peters was originally given 9 years. She argued the sentence was very harsh and intended to punish her for her statements about election integrity. The ruling does uphold Peters' original conviction on charges related to tampering with voting equipment. In the 78-page ruling, Judge Ted Tao said he was sending the case back to the 21st Judicial District.
They opened everything up, huh?
The strike in the Sheridan School District 2, just southwest of downtown Denver, is now in its 2nd day. Teachers and staff have been working without a union contract since August. Union President Kate Easter says the lack of funding has resulted in
There's nobody here.
Education gets worse, and then there's less students, and then because there's less students, there's less money, and then because there's less money, the education's not as good. And I think we have an opportunity
It's
here
dog
to
park.
reinvest in
You
our
don't want to walk a
community.
dog in that kind of weather.
You know, I was going to say, it's probably the weather. Nobody wants to be down here right now.
From financial advisors Chuck Ronabout, Richard Keller, Linda Mettenhall, Josh Smith, Zach Bryant, and Eric Peterman, serving financial planning needs at Mount Garfield Wealth Management Group, Raymond James Financial, Inc.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Wanda Summers.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. President Trump's primetime address was billed as an update on Iran. It was an update. It was also in places a burst.
Never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such clear and devastating large-scale losses in a matter of weeks. If there's no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously.
And an attempt to calm the nerves of a nation that polls show largely close.
It's very important that we keep this conflict in perspective. American involvement in World War I lasted 1 year, 7 months, and 5 days.
To walk through what this address revealed and about the direction of the war in Iran, I caught up with NPR National Security Correspondent Greg Garvey and Pentagon Correspondent Tom Bowman. This was for our weekly national security podcast, Sources and Methods. President Trump spoke for 19 minutes, which is kind of a long time to speak uninterrupted and manage not to say much, by which I mean most of what we heard last night, we had already heard it, so we hashed a lot of his recent social media posts. Either of you gain any new insight into this war from comments last night? Who are going to say?
Yeah, the one thing that really jumped out at me was this 2 to 3 weeks timeline for wrapping it up. And always risky to set a timeline. Military commanders and you set objectives, not timelines. Tied you to a deadline artificially. But he didn't say how the key critical issues are going to be resolved. Opening the Strait of Hormuz or dealing with Iran's nuclear program. He also didn't say, is there going to be some agreement that's going to end this war, or is the U.S. simply going to walk away? So I'm sure Trump will claim a success whenever this war ends. Huge critical questions unresolved.
And also the 2 to 3 weeks that you mentioned. He said if they don't come to negotiate, we're going to bomb them back to the Stone Age. Well, what if the Iranians say, yeah, let's meet in June, in Geneva? Is he going to say no? Is he going to keep bombing?
I mean,
we don't have a sense of exactly what the plan is going forward.
That is something I was listening for and did not hear last night. I did not hear an offer to Iran, no diplomatic opening. Do we know how this landed in Iran?
A little bit. We've heard from a couple of people in Iran, including a member of the Revolutionary Guards, and he said Trump has been poisoned with, quote, Hollywood delusions. And you sort of mock the U.S. You talk about the Stone Age when you're a 250-year history. It is a civilization with a 6,000-year history. So again, this it's rhetoric, but it is this tone of defiance. You're certainly not getting a sense that negotiations are going anywhere. We know Pakistan is trying to broker some talks and maybe passing on messages, but you really don't have a sense that there's real movement towards a peace negotiation that could resolve this and address the U.S. and Iranian issues.
We've been circling this, but just to land for everyone on the contradictions. You referenced, Tom, the line in the address last night about we're going to bring them back, bomb them back to the Stone Ages. Even while President Trump is saying we're very close to finishing the job, how do we score it?
No, we really
are we escalating or not?
Well, we're not sure yet. And again, it's contradictory. It's like we're bombing you, negotiate, we don't trust you, back and forth. And also, you have more U.S. troops heading into the region. We've talked repeatedly about Karg Island. They could seize Karg Island. They could seize some of the ports in the mainland. we don't have a sense of what exactly they'll do once everyone's in place.
We also don't know how
It'd be cooler if there was a bunch of lightning. So it'd be cooler if there was a bunch of lightning everywhere.
Some
lightning?
Yeah.
It just makes no sense. So again, you're kind of head scratching when you listen to what he was saying. He's right.
It definitely moved in quick, didn't it?
Navy and
What?
Air Force.
It definitely moved in quick, didn't it? About an hour, it's dark.
Severely weakened, but they're still in power, and they have a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz.
I am thinking, if I were listening to this speech in Paris, in Berlin, NATO allies, there were questions about whether Trump would continue his been on a bit of a hermetic against NATO. That was something I was listening for. We didn't get it.
See if I can't find it rather for me.
Yeah, he didn't mention NATO by name or European countries by name. However, he did repeat this phrase of these unspecified countries need to develop some delayed courage, I believe is the phrase, and take the Strait of Hormuz. And we're seeing some of this today. Britain is hosting a virtual meeting with 35 countries to talk about ways to open the strait.
You know, I talked to a European military official who said he believes Europe will eventually get involved in some sort of a naval effort to open the Strait of Hormuz. And he said one of the reasons is the price for liquefied natural gas in Europe has doubled in the past week. He said our populations will demand our governments get involved and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So I think you're going to see them get involved, but clearly the U.S. will be taking the lead, just like they did during the tanker wars in the 1980s.
That's NPR's Tom Bowman and Eric Riley on our national security podcast, Sources and Methods. You can hear our full episode wherever you get podcasts.
In the shadow of the Iran war, violence has increased in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, where hundreds of thousands of Israelis live on land Palestinians say is theirs. This month, groups of radical Israeli settlers have stepped up attacks on Palestinians. The violence is drawing rebuke from the U.S. and prompting change in Israeli discourse, but as NPR's Dana Estrin reports, little change on the ground.
Spring is lush in the Palestinian village of Kusra. Red poppies carpet green hills. But recently, Israeli settlers left their mark too.
The graffiti that they left several weeks ago, "Death to Arabs," it says here in Hebrew.
Behind this gate, you see a strawberry patch where a group of masked Israeli settlers ripped apart a greenhouse a few weeks ago. An unprovoked attack, says Palestinian Mayor Hani Odeh, who takes us to a strawberry farmer and calls out his name. Mu'tasim Odeh greets us in crutches and leads us into his home, where he recounts what happened and bursts into tears. The worst part I can't get out of my head, Odeh says. He watched one settler spray bullets, watched his 28-year-old son fall to the ground. I said, my son. And then he was attacked by another settler, stabbed 4 times in his legs, while the settler shouted, Die, die, die. That was 3 weeks ago. The Israeli military says it condemns incidents like this. It says police are investigating and apprehended some Israeli suspects. No charges announced. Since the Iran war began, human rights groups report Israeli settler attacks in more than 100 Palestinian villages. One attack was caught on tape last week. You see masked settlers in clubs attacking a Jewish-Israeli solidarity activist trying to protect Palestinians. The Trump administration doesn't always speak out about this, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio expressed public concern. U.S. pressure led to a wave of rare condemnations by senior Israeli officials who usually dismiss settler violence as a fringe phenomenon. Even Israel's most influential commentator, Amit Sega, said on TV, "There's no question it's terror," he said. He's a key voice in the Israeli settler movement. This is new, says Tomer Persiker, who researches Israeli settlers and modern Jewish identity.
Suddenly people are using the words Jewish terrorism. These words were denied over and over again for the last few years.
And what happened, I think, is simple. The Trump administration told Netanyahu that enough is enough.
And Israel has responded with lip service, he says.
You can denounce the Jewish terrorism there, but it's useless unless you actually change policy.
In fact, Israel continues to equip settlers with military-issued rifles and still provides army protection for settlers during new land grabs. A short drive from where the Palestinian father and son were attacked, Israeli settlers stopped for hummus at this roadside restaurant. Many settlers we speak to here bristle at the idea that settler violence is prevalent. Like Teddy Rennick, originally a New Yorker.
Did you see it?
We just met someone who claims
that they were attacked. Did you see them being attacked? Did you see the violence?
He was sitting in his bed, he was stabbed, and he saw his son get killed.
I don't know if it's true. Maybe. But it's not some mass thing. You're not seeing mass arrests.
There haven't been mass arrests. Rights groups say Israel rarely prosecutes these crimes. One rights group says at least 7 Palestinians were killed and more than 200 wounded by settlers in just the last month. There was one change this week. Israel pulled a military battalion out of the West Bank after CNN filmed those soldiers assaulting and detaining its reporters and calling for revenge against Palestinians. It was on US TV, footage you rarely see on Israel's nightly news. That has to change, says Odeh, the Palestinian man who watched his son get killed. Filled with grief, he suddenly switches to fluent Hebrew. He wants to drive his message home to Israelis. The Jews are afraid to put this on Israeli television. I don't know why. The whole world needs to see this, he says. Daniel Estrin, NPR
Put a
News,
picnic table down
the
here.
Israeli-occupied West Bank.
They put a picnic table down here. I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Attorney General Pam Bondi is out from the top job at the Justice Department, so
Wow,
will
look
be
at all these
nominated
calls.
5:35.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
This is CPR News. I'm Nathan Fernando Frescas. Every time you pull into a gas station across Colorado, you're going to feel one impact of the war in Iran that's thousands of miles away. Those prices,
they suck because they're stupid high.
How some Coloradans are coping with the fast hike in gas prices at 5:32. Well, if you're at the home opener for the Colorado Summit FC at Mile High last weekend, you know it was hot with temps in the 80s and plenty of sun. Not so much for the home opener for the Colorado Rockies at Coors Field tomorrow. You're going to need a jacket or hoodie with temps forecast in the 50s with plenty of wind. But you're still going to have that sun, so maybe some sunglasses too. First pitch gets thrown around 2 o'clock. This is CPR News. It's 5:19. Support comes from Pinnacle Assurance, a workers' comp provider serving members for over a century. Pinnacle offers safety and claim support with a commitment to its members' long-term success. Pinnacle, a membership built on care.
Stay on top of local news with the Colorado
Board, you ready
Today
to go?
podcast.
Sure.
Get the most important stories from across the state in under 15 minutes. We're on Apple Podcasts,
Cloud and stuff's
NPR app,
cooler at our
or
place than
wherever
they are
you
here.
listen to podcasts. Just look for Colorado Today.
Clouds are cooler at our place than they are here.
Don't have time to sell that car?
Watch
you
them
need to get
build
rid
and
of?
watch this one big old
Donate it
black
to
line go
Colorado Public
down.
Radio. It's fast.
Temp drop
just a
way
few
down,
simple
39.
steps, safe and makes an impact. Get started at CPR.org.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Fidelity Investments. A dedicated advisor can help build a flexible wealth plan. Learn more at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity
Tells you where your
Brokerage
parents were
Services,
buried on the
LLC.
death certificate, right?
And from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation,
think
investing
so.
in creative thinkers and
I thought it
problem
did.
solvers who help people, communities,
think so.
and the planet flourish. More information is available at
What about people that are cremated?
hewlett.org. This is NPR.
There's still a spot where they were cremated.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm
I still don't think it's on there.
And I'm Scott Detrow. NASA's historic Artemis 2 mission.
I still don't think it's on there.
Yesterday's
I thought
launch
I
from
saw
the
it.
Kennedy
I
Space
thought it
Center
was in
successfully
Buffalo,
put the
really.
crew's Orion capsule into space on course to eventually loop around the moon and back. 3, 2,
Still have it.
1.
It might be the, you know, like the city they died in.
Crew of Artemis 2 now
On there.
bound for the moon.
The city that what?
City and county they died in on there,
It's
but
NASA's first mission.
not necessarily where they're
Astronauts
buried or
to the moon
cremated or
for
anything like
50
that.
years,
Right.
and now the
Just
Artemis
where
2
they
crew is
died.
in orbit with planet
Right.
Earth in your windows.
I just wanted to describe for you guys the beauty that we're seeing. You can actually make out the coastline of the continent. You can make out rivers because of the sun glare. You can see high thunderclouds, and all the while you can see the entire Terminator, and you can see the South Pole lit up. It's just phenomenal.
Just before the launch, I spoke with Dr. Kelsey Young, the lunar science lead for the Artemis 2 mission. I want to talk about the moon in a moment, but first I wanted to ask you about is the spacecraft that's in the Orion capsule. I toured it a couple years ago with the crew. I sat inside it, and I just could not comprehend spending 10 days inside that space. How do you describe this vehicle, and what do you, as a non-astronaut working closely in this mission, think about the fact that they're all going to be crammed in there for that long?
I'm really glad that you've been in it. I have been in it many, many times, and from the context of this is where these astronauts are going to be actually observing the moon, and so how is that physical choreography going to work with each other? But of course, as a human being, you can't help but be like, wow, there are 4 people, some of which are quite large humans that are going to be crammed together in this tight space for a very long time. Good news is they really get along. But actually, we did run a training exercise with them in the lockup that it sounds like you have been in. And we actually hung a giant
whenever I get one of these
from inside the
animals
high bay of
to come over
the space vehicle mock-up
do that,
facility
and
outside
every
of
once
the
in a while I get
window
one
of the
that's
Orion
just
mock-up,
decides to kiss me all over my face. Remember, I tell the owners, I said, remember, I asked for it.
Tell me when in a few days they'll be seeing the real moon out that
It's one of my
window,
favorite
what they'll
dog stories.
physically be seeing, how close they're going to be to the moon, what the view is going to be.
The view for the Artemis 2 crew will definitely be different than the view that the Apollo crews got when they were orbiting the moon over 50 years ago. The moon to them will appear about the size of a basketball held at arm's length, and that's at the moment of closest approach to the time when, during the flyby, they are the closest they will be to the moon. And this is actually really exciting scientifically. My background is impact crater and aerial geologist, and impact craters are really important geologically, especially on the moon, because they can toss material hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers. They'll be able to see that entire space and make observations that will place processes like in context all of it.
Remember I just said I didn't have too many videos over K. I've got a bunch over K now. I was going to put them all together and run them through and watch the rest of them.
Yes, that feels very important for morale.
Morale, yes, and also science, because humans perceive color very differently. And we really, one of our highest priority science objectives for the mission is actually
I know how to do it, I just
so you
haven't
might
done it
say,
yet.
hey, wait, when I look up at the moon, I see black, I see white, I see some shades of gray.
Do you know where the windshield wipers are
We actually
on my
do know from Apollo and from crew observations both from orbit in Apollo and from the surface that there are some
know if you
nuances, and those nuances are really
slap
important as it turns out for lunar science.
or push them a little bit,
Color observations that
they go off, but they, if one of the back goes off,
that means we're really
stays
off.
It keeps on white.
There's a lot
One
of
in front
science here,
goes
but there's also this
beep,
really
beep,
inspiration
beep, beep,
and
and that's it.
mission, and it makes me wonder what first drew you to the moon. What was the first appeal?
Do you know how to fix that?
Not right offhand. I'm not sitting right in front of it.
Huh?
It was rock.
I said not right offhand. No, I'm not sitting right in front of it.
Grew up taking my sister and I on trips to national parks and state parks and things like that. And
I think there's something in there I haven't
going to the visitor center and learning about what form this terrains. And then I got to undergrad, and I found out that
yeah, That's a
study
big
rocks
book
for their
thing.
whole job.
I would
Like,
want to
they paid
run
to study
into
rocks.
those
And I
out
happened
there
to be
in
at
the
a
woods.
program that had a great planetary science
That
component.
yogurt
And when I
was
found
bad.
out that I could spend my career looking
Yeah, it was real
at
good.
exploring geologic drains and other planetary surfaces and helping the members
Late
do that one
night.
day, I never looked back.
There you go. Dr. Kelsey Young is the lunar science lead for the Artemis 2 mission. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
The Trump administration is responding to public health concerns about the nation's drinking water. Today, the Environmental Protection Agency said it would place microplastics and pharmaceuticals on a list of contaminants. NPR's Will Stone reports on what that will mean.
EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin touted the change as a historic step and a win for the Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA movement, which often raises concerns about toxic chemicals and plastic in our food and environment.
For too long, Americans have been ignored as they sound the alarm about plastics in their drinking water. That ends today.
Zeldin says for the first time, microplastics and pharmaceuticals will appear on what's known as the contaminant candidate list, alongside PFAS and other chemicals.
EPA will follow the science, will pursue answers, and will hold ourselves to the highest standards to protect the health of Americans.
The agency is required to publish an updated version of this list every 5 years. Their inclusion on the draft list can set the stage for more research and regulation, but it's no guarantee.
I think it's fair to call them leaders
Catherine O'Brien is with the environmental advocacy group Earth Justice.
and a distraction from the real harm
I looked at that tumbleweed inside.
are doing to public health by
It's been up and back already.
actual legal
Try to get the
protections
bill.
against toxic chemical exposure.
For example, O'Brien points out the administration has pursued an aggressive agenda of deregulation, including with PFAS in drinking water. But others are more positive. Sherry Mason is a researcher at Gannon University who focuses on plastic pollution in fresh water.
Nothing is ever perfect, but this is an important first step, and I think we should recognize that.
Zeldin was joined by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who said his agency is launching a $144 million program to research microplastics and how to remove them from the human body. Mary Grant with Food and Water Watch says there is substantive action the administration could take any day on microplastics, in addition to what it did today. Her group and a handful of governors have petitioned the EPA to add microplastics to another list. That would require microplastics to be monitored in the nation's drinking water. She says the White House is currently reviewing
But you drive for 7 degrees, it's 38 degrees over here.
That we need to understand the scope of the crisis in our drinking water, as well as to begin to
Rubber jacket left the cat's out.
If the administration doesn't act, though, she says it could be years, maybe a decade, before meaningful regulation takes shape. Will Stone, NPR News.
This is NPR News.
Just don't want to hit it and slip.
A new
Right.
library
Remind me.
project underway
I did
now
have to the other
to
day.
connect
You were
book
gone.
lovers with nature. Lots and lots of nature.
It will be part traditional library in some sense, and it will be part REI. We'll have lots of gear that people can borrow, and lots of expertise around outdoor programming in an environment that really meets people where they are.
On the next Colorado Matters, a sneak peek at this innovative project at 8 p.m. on CPR News and KRCC.
I'm Stuart Vanderwell, president of Colorado Public Media. We just won an important First Amendment case. A federal judge ruled the government cannot use funding to retaliate against independent news coverage. While this ruling protects editorial independence, it does not restore the federal grants clawed back last year. Your financial support continues to provide the strength needed to defend the First Amendment and deliver essential Colorado stories. Thank you.
Support comes from the Colorado Lottery, which has returned over $4.5 billion to parks, trails, and open spaces across Colorado. More information at coloradolottery.com/givingback.
Live from NPR News in New York City, I'm Dwalisa Kenttown. After President Trump called on countries to take military actions toward reopening the Strait of Hormuz, diplomats from more than 40 countries held talks to end Iranian attacks on oil tankers attempting to use the international shipping route. British Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper says Iran is holding the global economy hostage and the closure of the strait is, quote, unsustainable.
It's not just hitting mortgage rates and petrol prices, the cost of living here in the UK and in many different countries across the world. It is hitting our global economic security.
She told the group collective mobilization and diplomatic pressure is needed to reopen the strait. The closures hitting trading routes from Kuwait to the UAE to Asia and Africa. A key agency today approved President Trump's plan to build a 90,000 square foot ballroom where the White House's East Wing once stood. But as NPR's Frank Langford reports, a federal judge says the plan still needs approval from Congress.
William Scharf, chair of the National Capital Planning Commission, said opposition to changing the White House complex is nothing new.
Practically every change, every modification, every addition, and indeed every feature that we now celebrate as an iconic aspect of the White House was roundly and viciously condemned in its day.
Commissioner Phil Mendelson agreed the White House needs a ballroom, but opposed the plan.
I'm trying to be nice here. It's just too large. It's just too large.
In fact, the ballroom would be more than 1.5 times larger than the White House residence. The judge ruled last week that Trump has no authority to build the ballroom. The administration is appealing. Frank Langford, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow closed down 61 points. You're listening to NPR News.
This is All Things Considered from CPR News. I'm Nathan Fernando Frescos. The average price of gas is just over $4 a gallon nationally. While it's slightly cheaper on average in the Centennial State, drivers in Colorado are still feeling the pinch. CPR's Keelan Kemp reports.
25-year-old Tristan Collins checked his backpack, looking for the cheapest gas before pulling into South Circle Station in Colorado Springs, where regular gas is $3.79.
I mean, I used to spend $30 to fill up my car every 2 weeks, which is awesome. Now I'm spending $65, seeing how much it takes. It's almost double.
He works as a machine operator. The unaffiliated voter says he sat out the last election, but won't for the one coming up.
Because we got the gas prices, we got now a new war. It's like, there's so much happening right now, and it's like, every day you wake up, you wonder what's happening today, what got more expensive.
Tim Boros was blunt about the rise in gas prices.
They suck because they're stupid high.
He's in pest control and says he puts about 100 miles on his truck a day. Boros says a few days back, he paid over $60 for half a tank.
So it makes it harder to do the job. Plus, now you got to raise your prices for the job. And then with all our food going up because they're raising prices, they don't bring them back down when the gas goes back down.
His young daughter Victoria has also noticed prices are higher at the grocery store.
So you're paying $1.20 for a cucumber each.
Boros says he didn't like either choice for president in 2024. He cast a ballot for Donald Trump in hopes he'd improve the economy. Still, he's not surprised Trump, a former businessman, hasn't been able to get prices under control.
They say what you want to hear to get what they want, and they don't ever do what needs to be done. So it's like a lot of talk and no walk.
Until prices go back down, though, Boros says he and his family are canceling trips and staying at home to save money for gas and groceries, like those $1.20 cucumbers. In Colorado Springs, I'm Keelan Kim, CPR News.
Now, what's more accessible, reliable, and universally beloved than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Turns out this affordable finger food staple got its start at high tea. It's National PB&J Day. More about that coming up at 5.
It's cold.
This is CPR News. It's 5:30.
And the monitor was black, so I knew the power was off.
And from EBSCO, dedicated
Trying to figure out
empowering
what to do with
affairs
it.
teams with peer-reviewed research,
Finally, I decided
AI-powered
to
summaries, and tools
flip
for
the switch because I
literature
switched all the other switches
Learn
and
more
nothing
at
worked.
EBSCO.com.
I hit the main power
From the
switch and it
Kauffman
worked.
Foundation,
First
providing
time.
access to opportunities
That's
that
like
help
cool
people
beans,
achieve
Becky.
financial stability, upward
I gotta
mobility,
get
and
Becky out of our
economic prosperity,
conversation.
regardless of race, gender, or geography. Kauffman.org. And and from the Doris Duke Foundation.
You laughing?
This is All Things Considered from NPR News.
Cool.
I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Scott Tetro. Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General. President Trump announced she was leaving the top job in the Justice Department in a social media post today. He called Bondi a great American patriot and a loyal friend. Our Justice correspondent Ryan Lucas is here to tell us what we know. Hey, Ryan.
Hello.
There had been chatter about Pam Bondi's status for a while now, but then this afternoon, only this afternoon, President Trump announced she was out. What did he say?
Sometimes I like being at the park, sometimes I like
Trump
being
offered
here
a
better.
couple of kind words before Bondi. He said she had done a tremendous job overseeing what he called a massive crackdown on crime. He said, quote, "We love Pam," and he said she'll be transitioning to a much needed and important new job in the private sector. Those are his exact words. Didn't say what that would be, only that it would be announced later. And he also said that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is going to step in as acting attorney general.
I guess all those positive words make me wonder why she's leaving her post. Did he give any explanation for why he was removed from the follow-up?
You know, he didn't. But look, there's been a lot of frustration about Bondi's leadership of the Justice Department. That includes quite notably her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files early in her tenure. Bondi talked up the Epstein files. She once infamously said that Epstein's client list was sitting on her desk waiting to be reviewed. And then a few months after that, the Justice Department and the FBI came out and said there was no such client list. The department also initially refused to release any additional materials from the Epstein files. That created a lot of blowback.